Hey everyone, welcome to Buzzing About Romance. I am Becky, and joining me for this episode is Jenni. Hi, Jenni.
Hey, Becky.
And Amanda. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Becky.
And coming in hot as a hot mess express is Leah, who brushed her hair because if you've seen her this morning, she was scary.
You usually has a hat on. Yeah.
Oh, you should have seen me this morning, though. I mean, the first time I talked to Becky this morning, I did have my hat and my coat hood on, like I was all zipped up. And then when I talked to her later, I had taken the hat off, but it was still not good. So I have started calling the way I dress my homeless chic.
Yeah.
But let me tell you a little story first, and then we can get into the episode. So one of my friends, like we were at swim practice and we have an Aldi that's like right by the aquatic center. And so she's like, I went to the Aldi. She's like, I saw somebody who I could have sworn it was you. She's like, she had like a beanie on and her hair was this like kind of the same. She was dressed like similar to you and had like a really nice pair of Chucks on. She's like, I almost went up to this girl. She's like, because then I realized she was a girl. But she had her like septum pierced and I have no facial piercing. She's like, yeah, I realized it wasn't you. I'm like, oh, so she was rocking the homeless chic too. That makes me feel like I'm doing something right. But yeah, so anyway, but it was a rough day today. We'll just say that.
She goes,
I blame our dear Maisey Yates for all this.
Yes. So that was my purpose in mentioning it is, the cover of this book is cute. Like it's pink adorable, and green and it looks like deceiving. Hollywood lights and
yeah, that's a heavy book.
And it's like,
so let me say, like, I'm having a week. We have a lot of stuff going on, like family wise and emotionally. I cried, no joke, through like 70% of this book. Like I wasn't like ugly crying through a lot of it, just maybe only about 10%. But there were tears in my eyes for like 70% of this book.
I mean,
that's fair.
And like you, I'm deep in my feels. I cried. Now, Amanda, she said,
no, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm dead inside at this point. I got emotional.
Disconnected.
I got emotional. I mean, I felt it, but yeah, I mean, but to be fair, it takes a lot to actually genuinely make me cry, like big tears. Like every now and then I'll tear up or I'll be like, clutch my chest, that kind of thing or whatever. But I mean, it takes a lot to make me like full on cry from a book.
Fair.
So
fair. Okay.
That is fair.
So we are here for our Wednesday night format, our sip and discuss episodes, our book club stylings, where we talk about a book. This book is going to be spoiled. So if you have not read this book, you might want to stop, read the book, and then come back. Or listen, if you're on the fence about reading it, feel free to listen through. Just know we are going to spoil it.
Yeah.
So we have some enchanting details about this book to share. Who would like to share them?
I can do it.
Okay, go for it, Amanda.
Sorry. Okay, things to know before we start. The release date was January 1st, 2025, so this is really new. The tropes are close proximity, second chance at love, a fling, enemies to lovers vibes with a dash of reluctant friendship. This is a standalone. It's not part of a series as far as we know. The POV is single first person. Put out percentage is 41%. The audio narrator, if you did the audiobook, was Stephanie Rose. This is available for read and listen in KU. It was published by Montlake. Content warnings on this are grief, loss of a spouse, loss of a late-term pregnancy, and wildfires, which that part kind of hit me. I was not expecting the wildfires, and I was like, wow.
Well, and it's like, how crazy, like, we know this book was written a while ago since it's a Montlake book.
Yeah.
And all of that stuff was happening.
She talks about how she was inspired. They stayed at kind of a roadside motel, her son and her, as they were waiting to go on a cruise together. She was taking him on a mom-son trip on a cruise out of the port in San Diego. And so they stayed at this like kind of kitschy motel before they went on the cruise. And it inspired this story, and she tried to sell it to her editor, and HQN said, "Nah, we're gonna pass." She sold it to Montlake, which great for her, awesome.
Yeah.
But I do have a bit of a bone to pick with Maisey about this because, and I know it's trad pub, so it gets traditional published author. I consider Montlake one of the big publishers, right? Like, they own a market, right? But I think it's really important to remember authors don't have a lot of control about trigger warnings into their trad pub books. But nowhere in any of Maisey's marketing, nowhere anywhere, and I didn't go scrounge her website to see if she had them on there, but I couldn't, just like,
they're not.
There are no trigger warnings there. No. This book needed trigger warnings because just for the wildfires, especially what's going on in California right now, right? Like,
yeah.
So if you're in California and you read this, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry because I didn't know until I picked it up last week.
Yeah, this book it's a lot.
Yeah, it's heavy.
It was a lot, but it is a lot, but I don't feel like it was too much. Like, you know how sometimes we get an emotional book that triggers on a couple of different levels. So, like, on this one, we have grief.
Yeah.
You know, both of them have experienced loss of a relationship. He experienced loss of a spouse. She experienced loss of a pregnancy, a child. So even if we go into grief, sometimes we get books that pile on the sadness to show love shines through, you know, even in your darkest moment kind of thing. And sometimes it feels like things are put in just for that shock value.
Right.
But I don't feel like anything in this felt shock value.
But I feel like the way this book was structured, like the grief and like the sad was like the main gist of it. And like the funny moments were those interwoven pieces. Like typically, like when you read a romance, like it's more like the gentle is the book. And then like the sad is like the random like pieces added in.
Yeah.
I feel like this one, she worked it differently. And had she not, I don't think the book would have worked as well, especially with as heavy as their grief was, because they were both still like very, very in the grief fog.
Well, and let's talk about their meet cute. The first one. Like,
okay.
She recognizes him. He comes into that lobby to check in. She knows who it is. She's really excited. And he basically... he has like the Jenni like fortress, like
he's
touch,
very
don't talk.
Standoffish.
Like
he probably had that moment where he was like, no clue who you're talking about. Like,
yeah.
Well, I mean, and I think we find out later what his headspace was when he came in there. So she wraps that back around so that you understand exactly why he was acting that way.
And I think she did a really good job of that. So some of those early moments that you're kind of like,
he's just kind of an asshole.
It took 3 visits for them to actually have a conversation.
Well, like it was
the second one, I guess.
Yeah.
Because that was the fires, when he helped with the fires.
Yeah, and I think, like, as we were talking about, like, the grief going throughout, like, that grief actually, like, helped move the story along because it forced him to do something.
Yeah.
Well, and like, there's timeline jumps, but the timeline jumps make sense. So, like, you get when they first meet, and there's very limited interaction there, like, with her and him. But then the next chapter is the next year when he basically when he's checking in again. And so I think that's part of it too, is like you first meet him and you think, oh man, this guy's going to be like one of those asshole characters where like he's going to have like trauma in his background. You like have to figure out why he is the way he is, but then you find out why he is the way he is and you're like, ooh.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I thought it was going to be like his whole military team, like,
yes.
And,
and I just kept thinking this is going to be like some parent trauma, like his dad was a dick and made him do like wildlife survival as a teen or some shit.
I mean,
and that's why he's so
repressed. Trauma, but that was not
to that extent.
I really thought that it was going to be like parent, trauma, repressed trauma that he never dealt with
Uh-huh.
his parents or something, you know.
Well, and Stacy mentions in the comments she didn't even know if he knew her name until like a third of the
Right.
book in. And honestly, that was one of my favorite parts where she's like, does he even know my name?
Yeah.
That walk that they take to the grocery store.
Yeah.
When they come up with the idea of like, let's fake date, which I didn't even put that as a trope because I don't even feel like that was a
No,
trope in
it
this
was
book.
No, it wasn't.
No, there
Um,
was no fake.
It was the chapter heading, I think, for that one, though.
right. Well, and someone mentioned that over in Discord. I think it was Sue mentioned she felt like what trope was kind of going to be discussed in the chapter of the book that really bugged her. She didn't care for that. And I can respect that. And there
I
is
liked it.
I liked
It
it,
worked. It works for me.
Yeah,
It worked
I
for
like
me too.
but I think that for us, for what we do, you know, the fact that we dissect books and we talk about tropes and how they move the story along, I don't know that the average reader loves tropes as much as we love tropes, guys. Like,
But I
Maybe.
think
Yeah,
it's
that's
the
fair.
I mean, I think it was the way that it was introduced, though, because like each chapter has its own trope setting,
but
but
it's not every chapter.
it's
No.
not every chapter, but it also wasn't like a huge focus of the book either. You know what I mean?
well, and
Like it
another
was just like
focus
it
that
helped move the story along, and I
Yeah.
think that was the thing too. Like it's such a heavy story, she had to find like like little tricks to move this along, so it wasn't so heavy at the same time.
well, and
Well,
what
I kind of also saw it as like a learning device. The nerd in me, like somebody that
A little
doesn't
bit.
read books like we
Yep.
do. Like, hey, look,
Mhm.
this is what this trope is.
yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of helps define some things. But the other thing, and I noticed I was on Threads and Maisey had made a comment that she was getting critiques and criticism from people like on the KDP Publishing Facebook feed or the advertisements for the book, that people were commenting that they weren't going to even read it because here it is, a romance book where the main character is a romance author. That's so meta. And I will be honest, in the past, I am really critical of that because I feel like how many books have we read lately where the heroine is a romance author? Like, come on, people. There are so many other jobs that you can work from home or work in solitary that you don't have to be an author. Do you know what I mean? But I felt like the fact that he was this huge James Patterson commercial success author versus her category author, I felt like that was perfect. Like it worked so well. And I don't know that the story would have had the impact if she hadn't been an author and he hadn't been an author. Like I don't think you
Well, and
get
like
the
you
same
and
thing
I
if she was a doctor and he was a nurse. You know what I mean?
like you
Yeah.
and I were talking earlier though, like she was a writer, like when she lived in LA. Like she wrote for TV and like did screenplays and did things like that. So it was a natural progression of like where she changed her profession, but she didn't change her profession at the same time, like when she ran away from LA. Like so it worked well with her past too, because had she been something different, like it wouldn't have made sense for her to be that. Like she already was a writer, just a different style of writer. So it was an easy transition.
Yeah. Amanda, what are your feels on the she's a romance author vibe?
Oh, I loved it in this book. I really think that it worked, especially like, highlighting them as different people,
Mhm.
and how they, kind of still had the same feelings about certain parts of writing. But I don't mind it as much in a book. It really doesn't bug me unless it's just super cliche.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any of that here. I really liked how it worked within the story.
Another
Or-
okay.
And I think if you like the author uses it to their advantage, because there's a Samantha Cole book where she's a romance author, and like that is how she goes to that's why she goes to the club, is to like to do research for her book. So I think if it makes sense with the way it's introduced.
Wait. So if I go to the sex
Becky
club,
and
I can say it's research for the podcast?
I mean, sure, we we can write that off too.
Let's take a road trip, guys. Gotta find a
I don't know where
club.
we're road tripping to, but
Jenni is. Jenni was all in because her brain went there too.
I mean, yes, it did. But anyway, I'm just saying.
And
That's
Amanda's
when it
over there
doesn't
like,
bug
I
me.
don't do crowds or people, so I'm out.
I'll watch you guys from afar.
Stay
Let
up
me know. Let me
windows.
know how it goes.
I'll stay on the
She'll just-
balcony.
It would be acceptable for you to like walk to the door and run away at that point.
Yes.
It would be acceptable behavior.
She can pick us up.
Dee Dee. So another criticism of this book, so Nathan's character, it's single POV. This book is fully written. This is Amelia's story. This is Amelia's journey. But it's also Nathan's. But we don't get his point of view. And we've talked about this in the past. Sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we don't. In this book particularly, do you feel like there were moments where you're like, I really wanted to know what his heart was thinking? Or do you think Maisey did a great job and you didn't have any lingering moments where you were like, oh, I really wish I knew what was going on with him?
Can I say yes and no?
Yes.
Because there were times where like I felt like if we had got his point of view, it would have been beneficial to the story, but at the same time, I don't feel like I needed his point of view. Like when they were hiking, or like when they took the first hike to the Joshua
Yeah.
tree, like I would have liked to see like his feels in that moment, but I also think that like her reaction to him and how closed off he is made sense with the way his character was created.
What about you, Jenni? Did you miss his POV?
Like when the book was first starting, I kept like thinking like, are we gonna get his? But along the same lines, like I don't think he knew enough about like what was going on in his head that it wouldn't have been like repetitive.
Yeah. What about you, Amanda? Did you miss it, mind it, kind of want
I
it?
think like Leah, I think there were a couple of points where it would have been beneficial. My only real one was at the very end. Because I
Yes.
thought it
Yeah.
was really like it happened really fast and we're at 93% and he's still saying we can't be together and he's gonna leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a
Like,
minute. I
when
was like,
he's
so I
when
I
he
really
drives
wanted,
away,
yeah,
like
I
I would
really
have
wanted
liked
in
like
his
that.
head,
Yeah.
like at that moment, probably. And that could have been it. Like that would have really, I think that for me would have been where I wanted it.
My
Yeah,
moment was
like a 3-page
Yeah.
like him driving away and having this like aha moment. I would have been good with.
my moment for me was when he was in his room and she finds him drunk.
Oh yeah.
that could be a good one.
I mean, at that point in the book, I think that there were like huge tears coming down my face. I was deep in my feels at that
I was
moment.
already a mess.
Like there was no not crying at that point. But I would have liked to have understood. I find this is so like kind of morbid. I find grief slightly fascinating how different people deal with grief. Like, when my dad died, I used humor. Like people would call and ask for my dad and I would be like, dude's dead. He's not here. Thanks for calling. Or, something would come up. My mom would be stressed and upset. And I'd say, oh, let's go throw rocks at his grave. Dude is dead. And so he was so he kind of shut himself off.
Yeah.
And you get the feeling that in his grief, he didn't have community. The closest thing he had community to was the pink flamingo. And he wasn't really connecting with them. So his grief was isolating. And I would have just liked that moment. That's where story mechanics like a best friend or text conversation come into play. And I just wish I'd had that moment.
But I think the fact that his grief was so isolating, it worked that we didn't get his thought process.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about the setting of the Pink Flamingo, which was its own character, all on its own. The way she opens up talking about how she stumbled upon the listing and decided that could be
Just
her
to buy a
Yeah.
space. Because never do I look at roadside motels and
Right.
think that's my place. That's my community. I'm going there.
I will say though, when you were in that moment, you think about like what you could do to make your life completely different.
Yeah, and this was completely different from her Hollywood life.
Yeah.
And I love the characters of the pink flamingo, her best friend and her daughter. And in the end, when you find out that she had named the child she lost Emma, and then her best friend that she made friends with
like
had
ugly
little
cry.
Emma, like had Emma, I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Talk about meta. That's where the meta is. Like, you're supposed to be in that moment, I guess. And
Yeah, that was a rough part of the book.
but okay, first of all, as we were going through the story, I thought for sure one of the old ladies was going to die, and I was like getting ready to be angry.
Why would you even put that in the universe?
I would have had to DNF it. I'm sorry. If that had happened, I would have been like, sorry, I'm not going to be on Wednesday.
That?
But there were conversations where like, have you seen Gladys? Or have you seen Alice? And they kept talking about their ages. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what is
why
she?
would you do that
95,
to
so
us?
she's got to
My
be like
brain
I love Alice.
97.
Go there.
So Becky has claimed Gladys. I am claiming Alice. I love Alice.
Yeah.
I feel like if my life was a little different, I would be an Alice in my future. She is a mighty oak.
I'll be Wilhelmina.
Wilhelmina.
She's okay too.
I'll be
But when she's like
the dude.
The dude.
Alfred.
Albert.
Is it
Albert?
Albert or
I think,
Alfred?
I think it's Albert.
It starts with an A.
The moment
So,
where
but I did love that, like that point when they're in the pool and she's like, "I'm stuck. Like my necklace is stuck," and he like jumps into the pool, and that's the first time anybody gets like a look at his physique, and they're like, "Oh my!"
Oh, and they broke the washer. Like they
Oh my gosh.
unscrewed the
Took
washer
screws.
so it wouldn't work.
You
Like,
might
you're
need
not gonna
these.
figure that out.
Like, but so
And then
those
she just hands him
ladies,
over.
Yeah, like
they weren't even trying. Like, what was the one in the lobby? What happened in the lobby? Something that
Oh,
they
don't
did.
remember
I
that
don't
one.
know. Those ladies
it's
were.
where
oh,
she-
one of them passed out.
That's what it was.
Oh.
That's what it was.
It was Gladys because he had to catch her.
That's right. That's right. And she's like, I would have liked mouth to mouth. They were so naughty, but they were so delightful. But, you know,
But they were such a strong.
oh, the dancing.
They just were such a strong, safe space for her too.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the best things about these characters. Yes, they had like their crazy antics and things like that, but like she really connected with these people and they're in her grief, which she needed.
Well, and there's that conversation that she has with Gladys and Alice by the pool after he's said, you know, we're never going to be together.
Yeah.
I'm when I leave here, I'm not coming back. And you know, she realizes that in her own way she had created some walls and some isolation and hadn't, you know, these people were living in her space and she was creating community, but she wasn't fully sharing everything that was going on in her heart or what she had come from because none of them knew about Christopher, which, I mean, dude deserved like waterboarding and swirlies for being an asshat. And we'll get back to him in a second, but you know, that conversation that Alice and Gladys, and they talk about their great loves and, you know, what their next phase in life looked like and where they saw themselves going. And first of all, kudos to Alice for admitting that she went a little bit wild after the death of her spouse. She made sure everyone knew. She tried a couple dudes out to make sure to scratch the itch.
Yeah, but they just were so real.
So
Like,
real.
They showed her and told her like the grief is okay, the grief will always be there. It's what you do with the grief in the long run that makes the difference.
Yep. And then Alice and her Gladys and her singing and her sparkly dresses.
Yeah.
Like, I just loved her so much.
I just think it's so funny that they were like, Albert is like on the run from the law or something, or Alfred,
Yes,
whatever
that's
his
why.
name is.
That's like I'll
They
be
like
him.
they don't really know like what's like his background, but then like when in the epilogue when he's gonna officiate, she's like, "How can you do that if you're running from the law?"
He's not
That's
running
funny.
from the law. So let's talk about Christopher's character and how that thread was woven into this story, because it ends up not just being about the grief of loss,
Yeah.
but it's also the grief of like past mistakes. Like we mourn our mistakes and you think you've moved on, but then your past is thrust in your face and you realize that, oh, I haven't really ever dealt with that feeling. And I feel like that's what we got with the character of Christopher. She ran away from her life that crumbled in Los Angeles because she talks about how she didn't really keep in touch with friends that were her friends there, that Christopher got them all in
Yeah.
the breakup.
Well, so what happened? They lose the baby, and then I think it's like like 2 or 3 months after that they lost this baby. So like she is still like in her fog of chaos, and she comes home because her flight was canceled, and she finds him having sex with somebody in their house.
I did
Her
appreciate that
bed.
his new fiance and
Is
that's
not the
pregnant
same
is
person.
Yeah.
not the same
Yeah.
pregnant or is not the same person that he got caught
Yeah,
knocking boots with. I did
I
appreciate that.
appreciate that too.
Me too.
But so like she even says she's like she didn't really ever break up with him. She just left. Like she was done
Yeah.
because
There.
Yeah. But then, she also like self-reflects on their relationship and, her, not necessarily that she had anything to do with, the fact that he cheated, but the fact that they had problems before this ever
Yeah.
happened. And they probably wouldn't have still been together.
yeah. Well, and I do want to say that it's very true that the woman who is like loses the baby, especially not that a loss is a loss, it doesn't matter when, and I'm not discounting like early term losses, but when you
I
have a
agree.
late term loss like that, the way that you grieve and the way your partner grieves is very, very different because you connected with that kid, like you connected with the baby, you felt the baby, like you
Right.
did all of that, and they only got a minute part of that. And I will say the divorce rate and breakup rate after that type of loss is like 75 to 80%. It is very, very high. And so it's not surprising that it worked out the way that it did in this book. And it is one of those things like you grieve very, very differently, like in the moment and also years later. Like you still continue to grieve differently.
Um,
That was something I thought of like throughout the book because I mean, obviously, like grief's the tying like thread through
Yeah.
the whole thing is even if you lose the same person as somebody else, or like you're grieving the same person that's lost, if that makes sense. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
say we both lose a child, or like we lose a mother and like your siblings. Like, even if you lose the same person, it's not the same.
it's
Yeah.
not.
Like,
Yeah.
no matter what, like it's not the same for anybody. And I think she did a really good job of reflecting that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So this was kind of a little bit of a slow burn romance. I mean, it popped.
It pops at
41.
41%, but the way the story plays out, like it seems slow.
It seems.
Well, and it's also what 3.5 years late.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah.
time jumps.
Yeah.
But I feel like with the emotions that was happening here and the fact that it's love through grief, it's love after loss, I think we needed it to be a slow burn. And I'm a hater on a slow burn, you all know that. But I think this book had to be that way. We had to have these more emotional connections
Mhm.
because then we could just laugh in the face of every time he's like, it's just a fling.
Yeah, and then I think too with the fact that, when you find out his first visit is only 4 months after his wife has passed and he's
Yeah.
gone through however long she was sick and so he's been in that for a while and it was very fresh. And I think when you find that out too, it even reinforces that that's the way it had to happen.
Well, and the fact that like he was only there because of his wife.
Yeah.
Like she like wanted him to write this book that he is writing. Like he is doing it for her. Like she made the reservation. Like she picked the place. And so like there was a lot of her attached to all of it. And 4 months out, like you're especially when she was a great love, like you are
Yeah.
Yeah, and
not.
that's like I just had the realization as you were like saying that, like I would be so picked. Like, you want me to write your book? Like, you stay here and you write your book.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I feel like there'd be a lot of like the anger would be very prevalent. That stage
Yeah.
would be like front and center for a while.
Yeah, and he's very angry.
He's very
Yeah.
angry.
And then he runs into someone he's attracted to, like 4 months out from the
Well,
love
and
of
that
his
just
life.
pisses him off
Yeah, so
more.
he's even more angry about that.
I think that's the thing too. Like he's just really mad about the fact that he is attracted, which I mean, they talk about it too, but it's
Yeah.
like, it's so frustrating for him that like he could possibly be attracted to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of like at the end, that's one of my favorite lines when he's like, I don't want to love you.
Yeah.
When
Great,
he comes back,
thanks. Yeah.
when he comes back and he's like, look, I don't want to love you. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, that might be
That's
the worst
that's
I
why
love you ever.
I wanted in his head so bad in that scene.
Mhm.
Like I really did.
I think
Yeah.
that's fair. And the epilogue is a wedding. And I did like the little side love story of her best friend and the mechanic. And that, it's kind of that shadowing of this guy saw me at my worst and says that he can still love me and see that I'm not always at my worst. And I felt like that was like supposed to be like a shining beam at Amelia. And it took her a minute to kind of grasp that there were some parallels between, but you were seeing him at his worst. You were seeing Nathan at his worst versus her.
Well, but there's a lot of little things that happens through the book that like it shows how much he really does care. Like, dude spent like 10 grand on a flamingo Christmas tree in the Christmas tree auction.
Right. Yeah, but he had to beat Christopher.
The ex was bidding and he could not let him win.
Yeah, that's what I was like, dude.
You love her.
You need to have like a heart to heart with yourself.
Yeah, you need to find Jesus all by yourself, dude.
I will say too, one of my favorite parts of the book is when they go to her hometown, like to her mom's house.
Oh yeah.
Like she's like, I need to go see my mom. Like I need to to go. And they go there and she sees the house and she's like, I don't need to do this.
Yeah.
I thought that was just really like profound.
Well, it's coming to the realization that there was a reason you cut this person out. And there's a reason this person stopped showing up for you. And it's kind of that moment in your brain that clicks that says, it's okay if I stop showing up for them. Like sometimes you doubt, did I make the right choice cutting that person out of my life? Is this the right path for me? So then you see them or you have an interaction or you hear something about them and you think, yep, I was right to cut that time. So I really felt that was powerful in this book. And showing, it also kind of shows her growth a little bit too.
Oh yeah.
Because I think in the beginning of the book, like her past, as she talks about her life in LA, you understand all her insecurities. Like she didn't like to be in the crowded room. She just wanted to be home, her disconnect with people. And then like now she has this thriving community where she's the beacon, right? They're all there for her. Everyone shows up for her.
Well, and they keep coming back.
Yeah.
And it forces her. Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it also forces her to like confront like her pattern of running away.
Mhm.
You know, because she ran away from Bakersfield, she ran away from LA, but now she's somewhere she doesn't want to run away, so she needs to confront why she does it. You know, so like it all tied in for me. All of that with her mom, everything with Christopher, like I felt like Maisey did a really good job of just like tying everything in and wrapping it up.
Yeah.
So
Stacy in the comments on YouTube says, I don't understand why Christopher was bidding so high, and I do. I think that it was one, he was trying to apologize for his actions, but also I think he was trying to emulate the romantic Christmas hero that he plays. So I think that it's a little bit of both. He was playing his part, but
Well,
also
she talked about like how he's like a really charming guy.
Yeah.
Like he's not a great actor, but he's very charismatic.
yeah. So I just think that that was also to kind of show that he plays a part. He doesn't necessarily, he's not necessarily himself. He plays a part.
Well, and I think that's part of it because he like has called her a couple times since he found out that she was
Right, that
there.
Zoom meeting with the crazy production
Well, 'cause-
community.
so they have
theater
this
director?
whole like desert. It's a very
Right.
desert Christmas, and they're
She's
like
insane.
creating all of this stuff, and they're inviting people for this auction to raise money for the wildfires. And this producer person, whoever,
Community
like, is
theater
so
director.
ex-
It's all you need to know. She was a director in
Yes.
community
So
theater.
she is like, we got this actor. He's in all these Hallmark movies or like Hallmark-esque movies. I don't know if they actually called it Hallmark, but like, and then said his name, and Amelia's like, oh fuck. But
And
she
like,
doesn't.
it rolls out the screen.
Yes.
The
But
next
so
meeting.
nobody aside from the best friend knows that she dated this dude. And
No, the
they're
best
on a
friend doesn't
Zoom-
even know.
Yeah,
It's
she
not
doesn't
till the
even know
end.
until
She knew his
after.
name, but like didn't know who he was.
Just a
But so they're
first
on.
name.
Yeah.
Yes, so they're on this Zoom meeting with him and they make eye contact and she's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
then
I
he starts
related
calling
to that.
her.
To that, like her internal battle of like, do I run? Shit, I'm in the front row. Like,
Like
Right?
fight or
I'm gonna
flight has
draw.
kicked
Yeah.
in.
I'd have been like putting my purse in front of my face. So I
Right,
could,
This is when you
like,
wish you had a
something.
hoodie on and
I
could be
would have
like,
just pulled my beanie down.
Yeah.
how can I slunch down in my chair?
You can't see my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm not here.
We had a dog early on in our relationship that would stick his head under the bed when you would call him and he didn't want to come. He would stick his head,
So
and it
you couldn't see
basically,
him?
if I can't see you, you can't see me. And he was like a 250-pound Saint Bernard. Like everybody could see you, dude. You aren't really hiding. But that was kind of that moment. Like,
Yeah.
okay. Is there anything else in this book that anybody wants to talk about?
I will say that at one point she compares him to a flourless chocolate torte of a man. And I was like, okay, sign me up. And I've been trying to get my husband to make me one ever since I read it. Just, I'll let you know if I can talk him into it.
Okay, you let us know.
So
Just
when
so we're
I read
clear.
that, I thought of, because we had flourless chocolate tarts when we went to Bluegrass.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they were so like
They're
yeah,
amazing.
but they were so rich. Like I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I can't eat this. Yeah. So then I was like, dude, maybe you're too much.
Yeah, it's like a once a year thing. But I've decided like right now is my once a year.
This
Right
is
now.
the time.
Well, the world is kind of on fire, so you
That's-
deserve a
yeah.
flourless chocolate torte.
Yeah.
And see, I'm over here thinking, how can I convince Mike to make bread this weekend? Because I really, those rolls from Thanksgiving, I really want rolls.
yeah,
Well, you didn't
that's
eat
fair.
them because
No, but my
This-
kids talk about them. Like, yeah.
you're welcome.
And the bacon.
And the bacon. Her children, I made bacon to go on the Brussels sprouts. And her children are like, as soon as they smell like a hint of bacon, they're like, is that bacon? Are we having bacon? I'm like, it's not a side dish.
It's like my dog. You open the bacon package and he runs.
they
That's
like,
my
Like
children.
he just knows the package sound.
so I made extra and each child got a slice of bacon. They wanted that more than they wanted the steak at
They did.
Thanksgiving. It was so
I
funny.
mean,
It is
they
bacon.
know it's good.
Um, the nativity scene practice where he
Yes.
pretends to be the horse and she's just like,
And then she has to be the camel.
and she has to be
Yeah.
the camel. Which, did we know a camel was a barnyard animal? Did we know this?
Yeah, I mean,
In
I mean, it
certain
was at the
areas, it could
nativity, I
be.
think, but it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
a
yeah,
barnyard
but
animal.
yeah.
But she refers to the older lady,
Yeah.
or the production lady was like, and the barnyard animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
This is it's such a good story, and it's just know you're gonna be up in your feels when you read this book.
it does have some big feels. Okay, so let's do our thumbs up, thumbs down, and then if you liked this, we think you should try this. Leah, thumbs up, thumbs down.
It is a big thumbs up for me. This is a book that I will read again. I will recommend it. Actually, I almost texted my mom today to be like, you need to read this book, but I didn't. So, but I will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really great story.
Yeah. Amanda, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Oh, yeah,
Sideways.
thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Jenni, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Thumbs up. I definitely think there's like something everyone can relate to and kind of like learn from
Yeah.
in this story.
It's a thumbs up for me. We didn't talk about it, but Stephanie Rose did an amazing job on the audiobook. I listened to the audio, thoroughly enjoyed it. The emotion, the inflection, she did a really great job. So, and you didn't miss Mister's POV. I felt like this was her reading her diary to me, almost. Okay, so if somebody really likes this book, maybe that they needed a good cathartic cry romance or just a fling, what are some titles that we think are good comparisons?
Very different books.
Yeah. Well, somebody said, how does this book compare to Maisey's other books? So Maisey does actually like to play with loss and grief in her books. But usually, and she also has lots of them that deal with like family, like somebody coming in and their family is not as, she deals with lots of found family, and she likes to Disney a lot of parents. She does like to play with emotion, because like her Pine Ranch series, I think is what it's called. There's lots of emotion in that. And like the heroine in that book, her parents are trash, but it's like 9 found family siblings, foster kids that were all raised together, working through some stuff. So, but she does like to sprinkle humor in. So I don't know. I like a Maisey Yates book. I always know I'm going to get a quality story when I read her books. Was this anybody else's first Maisey?
It was
That was
mine.
mine.
First. We're all kicked off.
Yeah.
Maybe
There-
we'll
there are
kick
too
Becky
many
off the
books.
island.
There are just too many books.
There are too many books.
She has a
Amanda and I
lot.
had we had this conversation today.
Yeah.
Because
It's
the
just-
like little blurb at the end even says like she has over 100 books. I'm like, no wonder you had a daily word count, lady. Like,
Upside, though, she does a lot of categories, so they're not super long.
They're
Shorter.
not. They're shorter books. Okay, so if somebody likes this, what else should they try?
I only have one,
Go for it.
so I'll go first. The King of Nothing
I
by
just
Aurora
wrote
Rose
that one
Reynolds.
down while we were sitting here because I thought about it.
Yeah. They're both dealing with grief. It is kind of like it's not really vacation, but they are both away from where they normally call home. Like if you haven't read that book, please just read that book. Alora and Roman are just, I mean, big feels in that one, huge feels.
There
Well,
are a
and
lot of big
he's
feels
running
in
from
that.
grief.
Yeah. And
So-
she is, I mean, she's not running from it, but she's dealing with it. So kind of similar to Amelia.
Yeah,
They're both like working through it. It's hard.
there's some big feels. I also think For Never is another one by Aurora Rose Reynolds that has kind of the grief, and also the relationships, and when it's worth pursuing and when it's worth walking away. I think there's a lot in that book of that too,
Also,
especially
that
with,
one is just her POV also, so
Yeah.
you get that like side of it too.
is King of Nothing just her POV?
No, it's dual.
No, it's dual.
Okay.
Yeah.
couldn't remember.
I have one also,
Yeah.
just one. Because I looked at the list and I didn't have anything else to contribute. So Just One Night by Charity Farrell. So he is a widower. She had passed away about a year before that, and they hook up, and he like freaks out. And then the rest of the story is like what the aftermath of the hookup. But
Yeah.
it's done really well because like for I'd say like 85% of the book, like he is still like struggling, but it makes sense. And you know how we read Lorenzo, and by the end of Lorenzo, I was like, I don't know if I really believe it that he like the wife that had passed is still very much in the relationship.
There were
But
3
this
people
one I
in
didn't
that
feel that way.
relationship. Yeah. You can steal any of the ones that were on my list. I just went
It's
looking.
okay. You can talk about them.
Jenni, did
Actually
you?
have one. Yeah.
Okay.
Igniting Ivy by Samantha Christie.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's the same like loss of pregnancy and aftermath and the grief, and that has some messy in it.
Oh, she likes messy.
I also think
Yeah, but
Danica's first book in her hockey series, I think is it Game On? I think that book,
Let me look it up.
she's a widow, and it also is dealing with pregnancy and
Pregnancy,
loss.
like, yeah,
Something
not
Unexpected.
Game On. Let me
Not
look.
what's the first? It's the first one.
Yeah, I'm
Dinah.
looking.
Something Unexpected by Vi Keelan. The grief is present. Like,
Oh,
that's the one where grandma's dying and is taking the
they're on
hospice
the grief
approach.
tour,
Yeah, the
basically.
grief tour. That book was deep in feels.
So good.
But it was so good. If you want just a fling,
Take the Shot.
Take
by
the
Danica
Shot
Flynn.
by Danica Flynn is another good one. The Tryst by Lauren Blakely is also a good, it's a fling, not really grief, but fling. Where Waves Break by Julia Wolf, again, it's a fling, but it's also dealing with some grief and loss of relationships, cutting people out of your lives. The Holiday Trap by Roan Parrish, again, it's a vacation fling. Beyond the Team by Kaylee Ryan, vacation fling. The Summer Proposal by Vi Keeland. If it didn't bother you that they were both keeping secrets in this book, because, you know, sometimes keeping a secret, even from the reader, can, by the end, you as a reader feel betrayed on top of the characters feeling betrayed. The Summer Proposal by Vi Keeland, he is keeping a secret from her. And, you know pieces, but you don't know it all. And so that's one of those where you're like,
I was mad at him.
you were mad at him? I was mad at him, but then he groveled really well. So I wasn't
He did
as
grovel
mad at him.
well, but I was mad at him.
That's fair. That's fair. Make It Sweet by Kristen Callahan. If you liked the flourless chocolate torte comment, read that book because baking for her is his love language.
I'll have to move that up. I'm all over the place, but yeah.
It's so good. That book is so good. Hooking Up by Helena Hunting. It's the grief of a relationship being over, but also a vacation fling. Her groom gets a blowjob at their wedding reception, and it's casted over the microphone that he's mic'd with. And she walks out of her wedding and goes on a
As
vacation.
one should.
Right?
maybe rip up that like marriage license.
Yeah, don't
or
file
whatever.
that. Summer Rental by Mary Kay Andrews. It's also, she inherits a motel or summer
yeah.
rental, and there's some grief in that one also. And then Tour Wars by Carla Luna, again, vacation fling. And I think that's all I have. Did I miss any other books?
I don't think.
I don't know. I didn't know I
forget about
needed
this
the
part
cry.
until like 5 minutes before I can jump
Same.
on here.
Usually
You had a-
until she says it, and I'm like, oh.
You had a bunch that I thought of, or a couple that I thought of, and then like that was really my only other
Yeah.
like
Like I said,
vacation Vacation Fling also, I would say The Legacy by Dylan Allen is really good, especially if you want to like he doesn't want to be in a relationship. Like they don't, there's big almost kind of like family drama with that one too, but that's a really good Vacation Fling one.
I need to move Dylan Allen up on my TBR. She's been there for too long.
It's like very big
Same.
like Dallas Dynasty vibes in the series. Like I
Oh,
really
I'm
want to get
there
back
for
to
that.
I really want to get back to book 2.
I
It's
love
it's
those like
soon.
saga chaos books.
Maybe we need to move that up to our sip and discuss TBR.
Maybe.
Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us for this episode of Buzzing About Romance. Don't forget, we'll be back this Sunday for more romance book fun. We are going to provide you with the ultimate big game TBR. And the big game we're referring to as the Super Bowl. But you can't say Super Bowl because you'll get fired.
But you had to clarify.
But I wanted to clarify it. Just make a note.
Well, you'd never know what kind of big game we might be talking about.
Right. I mean, I did the episode with Heather where I said the title was Going to the Club, and we talked about book clubs. Do you know how many nasty messages I got from people that were like, I thought you were going to talk about like sex clubs, and now you're talking about book club. Yep. And I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I mean,
I thought the same thing though, so I can't say anything.
She hasn't gone on her field trip yet. She can't do that episode.
We need to do some research.
That's true.
I bet Heather would go on a research trip for us to that. She'd be a total looky-loo. I'm still... What was the comment that she said the other day? Group your poop or something?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forget. But yes.
I was dying. Anyway.
I couldn't handle that. Like, I shut down after that for a little bit.
Mark your calendars for next Wednesday, where we are diving into Blindsided by Eden Finley. This is a book that Heather has declared she will accept no criticism on.
Oh, Lindsay said it too.
And Lindsay said it too, so...
I mean, that's a pretty high order for Lindsay.
Right?
It is.
So we all should be reading that this week and getting ready for next. Anyway, thanks everybody for hanging out with us tonight.
Of course.
Until next time, everyone.
Happy reading, everybody.
Find us on Instagram at Buzzing About Romance or on Twitter at Buzzing Romance. If you like the podcast, please leave a review. If you'd like to support us directly, join the Bookcase and Coffee Patreon and receive exclusive content only available to Patreon members. Check out bookcaseandcoffee.com for our on-the-shelf show notes.